Welcome, everyone. This is Jennifer Filzen. Welcome to Connecting with Jennifer Filzen. And I have Olivia on the line with me. And boy, we are just talking up a storm. And I need to get this thing started because our content is already like so good. And I haven't even welcomed you guys into the into the into the mix. Anyway, um, thank you so much for being here. And please, I did get it right? Because I know that you guys have a stage name and all this stuff. I did get it correct. Okay, good.
Yeah, you did.
Tell
I like the term stage name. That
it,
works really well.
it is a
So
stage name, yeah. And my when I was doing music, I was Sirena, which is Spanish for mermaid. So it was
nice.
living Jennifer Filzen. It was also interesting living Sirena. So I get it. I totally get it. So tell us
Well,
a little about you and your uh, writing partner and your series because we were just getting into it. Maybe we'll have to do some editing to make sure that everybody like gets in some of the cool stuff, or maybe we can repeat it. I don't
sure.
know, but it's just
I'm happy
so
to read.
it's meaty. I feel like getting out a fork and a knife and just kind of like diving in. You know what I'm saying? So tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about you and your books and your series and how reality keeps stealing your plots, as if you don't mind.
Of course. So I'm Olivia Wylie. I am the O in OE Tierman, and I write with ES Argentum, the E in OE Tierman. And it's funny that you talk about having stage names because we both study the Irish language. And Tierman is the anglicized version of an Irish word, Tierman, which means a refuge, a place of sanctuary, a safe place. It
Mm.
actually comes from the concept of a place to hide from a storm. And so when we were choosing a name we wanted to go with, we knew we didn't want to get hate mail in our inbox, our personal inboxes. We knew we didn't want to deal with the caveats around and the bad cachet around co-written books. So we chose a non-binary singular pen name to go with for the whole series. But yeah, we when we were deciding what's our pen name going to be, we wanted something that referenced why we wrote the series. And I can't remember who it was, but one of us looked at the other and said, "What about chairman?" And yeah, that's what we went with.
That is so cool. Truly. Gosh, there's so much to get into. So, what we've already kind of talked about is how you're a landscaper by day and an author by night. We all have to have our thing that feeds us, right? So we can feed the passion, right?
Hmm.
Also, too, like how did you and your partner sync up and become authors together? Was that something you wanting to do together for a long time? Did you just fall into it?
Well, it's a really twisty story, but it was a lot of fun. Um, we met almost 11 years ago when I had just moved to Denver. I was brand new and very lonely. So I started an Irish speaking club because my Irish was getting horrendously rusty and I needed to speak with other speakers. And the first night, the only person who showed up was my future writing partner. So they were running a play by post role playing game. And we chatted and we talked in Irish and we talked in English. And they invited me to this game. And I had played games in college because you can't really focus in college when you're taking 22 credits on anything but those 22 credits. Yeah. So I yeah, I was thinking that's a great way to start to get to know folks. So I was invited into their fantasy world and we had such a great time with that we really became close friends at playing this telling these stories to each other and telling these stories together. And it just became normal for us. We actually wrote the entire script for a different project through that. But then 2016 hit like a hammer, and everything started getting fairly dark. And our circles of friends are mostly people of color and people under the rainbow banner. And we were hearing a lot of very nihilistic, very depressed talk along the lines of we're screwed, we're screwed, we're screwed. And so we kind of looked at each other and said, okay, let's posit we're screwed and write the darkest version of America that we can imagine, and then write our way out of it, write our way out of this corporate, excuse my French, hellscape, um, and write our way into a better future through the trials and tribulations of these characters. Although I will admit that is what we came to. At first, it's like, let's get these emotions out somehow. And so we started writing cyberpunk. And the more we wrote, the more we were writing in these characters taking care of each other and supporting each other and working towards a better future. And after about 3 years of writing back and forth, I turned to ES and I said, you know, this story has been so good for us. We really need to give this to other folks. People need hope right now. They need hope they can believe. They don't need hugs and blankets. They need scrappy, industrious, tough hope. Resolve is the word I use. They need the kind of scrappy resolve that says, okay, I see your broken world and I raise you the willpower to change it and the spit and vinegar to change it. So we decided, yeah, we'd go ahead and clean it up, turn it into something to publish. And we've been really happy with the way it's gone so far.
Oh my gosh, how exciting for you. Seriously.
It's been a great trip. And the writing with ES has been a lot of help. Both of us had rough times in the 2020s, like everyone, but
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. Who has not suffered? Everybody. Yeah. But okay. So
but yeah,
this is
productive suffering.
I
Yeah,
want to question because I'm just curious how you feel. So there's a lot of science behind frequencies and energy,
sure.
and there's the theory of thoughts become things. You take a C noted tuning fork and you strike it, and every other C noted tuning fork anywhere in the vicinity rings right along with it. Got my face behind, but like we are surrounded by air, but what we cannot see are gamma waves and UV waves and all kinds of different waves and frequencies and energies. And there is scientific proof now. We've always thought it was kind of woo woo, but it really has a lot to do with what is your mindset, and because of your mindset, what do you attract? The law of attraction. So here's my question: we are in the Trump era. Everything is and then you're letting your imagination run wild. What are your thoughts on that theory of we imagined it, therefore it comes to fruition? So, because you know what I mean? Like, if someone's always going to be seeking out, like, oh no, an accident's going to happen. Guess what? They're going to get an accident kind of deal, right? So, do you think that it was a manifestation of so many people in our country thinking the same things and then it just came true?
I think it's a mix of things. We are the stories we tell ourselves. We are the stories we tell as a culture and as individuals. So if we tell ourselves the story that we have no future, well, then it's true. But if we tell ourselves the story that we're going to go through hard times, but we can make this different, then that's what's going to come true. And the more I study as a layperson, I will say that up front and quite honestly, but as a layperson, the more I study history and politics, the more I understand that all of this policy, all of these things that have shaped our lives boil down to what story do we tell ourselves and what story do we tell each other. And so a lot of the storyteller's work is change the story, change the culture, change the world. And until we change the stories we're telling, we're going to keep getting what we get, which unfortunately, there are a lot of really dark stories around right now. There's stories of zero sums games and us versus them, and
And
feeling
guns,
like,
where guns, like you
yeah,
can't turn on television or a movie without guns being involved. Why?
yeah. And this idea that of they people who believe it call it rugged individualism. I think of it as isolation, and isolation kills hominids. Um, we're not built to be all by ourselves all the time. And when we are, we get sick. We get sick in the heart, and we get sick in the head, and we get sick in the body. So I think that our job as storytellers is to start changing those stories.
Oh,
And
I love your answer. This is so cool. So I have a marketing agency. That's my day job.
mhm,
Uh, we are the storytellers of the small businesses that we work with, and we're
right.
making superheroes, and we're showing their uniqueness and their authenticity and what makes them special. And I always ask people, what is your why? So you're right. It's like you are the hero of your own story,
Hmm.
and and because you are crafting your own story, you are either explaining who you are and why you are, or in the course of marketing and with activism and other things, you're building community around
Yep.
them. You're tying all the individuals to a greater purpose. And you're right. It's like I have a little sign in my bedroom that says, "Find the good in every situation." And I've been working a lot on that in the last couple of years, right? Because we're almost, we're what is it? We're at the 15, 16-month mark. It's
Mhm.
like, wow, it's coming along to where we're gonna be able to say, wow, 2 years ago, it's like, oh, but there's a lot of good that has come out of this. And I think part of it is the visibility of seeing, like the gal that videoed the George Floyd um,
Yeah.
Derek
Wide.
incident, and she's getting nominated for a Nobel. No, gosh, it's a prize. Is it? Is it? Is it?
It's not the Nobel, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
News? Lord, I forgive me. Um,
No worries.
I'll have to edit. Figure out what it is. But the point is that, yeah, it's like, okay, she really changed the world, and if we all had not seen that, would we truly be able to understand? But because we saw it and it made us cry and it made us feel deeply like, whoa, hold up.
Yeah.
No. And it formed more people to come out saying, I am an ally. I am an ally. Like it was a horrible, horrible thing, but what a beautiful transformation.
Yes. And this goes to the whole idea of stories. We do have to deal with the stories that have been told before us. And lying about them isn't going to help anybody, or the ones it's going to help aren't don't have the best intentions. Let's put it that way. And I'll leave it at that. So lying about the past, lying about the history, that isn't what we're here for. So when I say rewrite the story, I mean rewrite the story of the future. Rewrite the story of where we're going next. We
Yeah.
don't have to keep repeating what we've done in the past. But yeah, it's there's also a lot of power in retelling your story, your own story. It doesn't have to be, I know some people think that sounds like lying, but I don't intend it that way. What I intend is, okay, I come from this. That means I can change it. And in some people's stories, their ancestors did terrible things. A lot of us have ancestors like that. And we can retell that story as my job is to be a better person than my ancestor was.
Oh, this is so cool. I love how deep we're going. That's
Well, if we're on the subject of kind of esoteric stuff,
yeah, yeah.
people talk about, I hear okay, I heard older relatives in my family saying, "What happened to the age of Aquarius? Where did it go?"
Yeah.
And I always laugh because now that I know what they were talking about, now that I'm old enough to know that information, I look at them and I think the age of Aquarius is supposed to be 1,000 years. And it's supposed to be all the comforting lies that we told ourselves in the childhood of humanity are going to stop working because we're growing up as people and as societies and as humanity. They're not going to serve us anymore, and we're going to have to look them in the eye and say, this doesn't work, as uncomfortable as that is. But this is the age of Aquarius. It's the age of all of the old false narratives failing and us reckoning with the truth and then coming to a place where the truth is what we all believe and what we all follow. So right now, it's not that things are getting worse, it's that they're getting uncovered. And it's really unpleasant, but until we stop telling ourselves lies and false narratives and comforting things that don't really serve us, we're not going to grow up. And we have to grow up.
Oh, I love talking with you. This is so cool. So cool. Yeah, there's so much to unpack here. To touch on something we mentioned earlier, we tell our own stories, we create our own future. Then you've got the conspiracy theory folks, and it's really interesting because it's. I read an article about how the conspiracy theories have a lot. They're very similar with how you write a video game. You know,
Yes.
you're trying to have people solve a mystery, and you leave clues to help them get to the next level. But
Mm-hmm.
then they see something that you never intended to be a clue, but they will like really, really believe in that particular clue, and it just happened to be a random thing. It's like, no, no, that really isn't part of it. The game developer is saying, but the audience is like, no, this thing, it's pointing to this, and it's like, okay, well, but that's really not it, but it's over here, but okay. But because people are feeling like they are solving a puzzle, they feel like, oh, well, this, of course, this makes total logical sense. And and I do not understand how people are believing these conspiracy theories, but yet at the same time, when they are in a scarcity mentality, when
Mm-hmm.
they're already more individual minded versus community minded, when they are jaded or just feel like they have to live a scrappy existence because no one cares, it's easy to um, fall into that narrative. And it's interesting, isn't it, how I myself have to. I used to be the worry wart. I actually come from a long line of worriers, and negativity tends to be the default in the narrative that I grew up with. So
Right.
I am doing everything in my power, like brushing my teeth every day. I'm also doing everything in my power to seek out the positive in everything, so I can, for myself, push away that negative energy that I had been so accustomed to. And I'm stretching to make sure it's like, no, 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 let's look at the positive. Let's look at the positive. Even when something's uncomfortable, I might be like, "Arr," but then it's like, okay, there's something good out of this. There's something good out of this, right?
Right.
Tell me, oh my gosh, there's so much fun stuff to talk with you about. So tell, we talked about this before I started the show, and then let's go into it a little bit more. You guys saw that Trump had come into office, and the alphabet mafia, the LGBTQ. Um, Forgive me, there are so many letters now. Even though I'm an ally,
Yes.
I don't remember them
Sometimes
all.
I go. Sometimes I go with quilt bag. A lot of the younger folks use queer, but older folks are still uncomfortable with that because it was used as a slur against them. So my mom's generation doesn't always like us using queer,
Okay.
and so it really depends on who you're talking to, which term you're using. For the purpose of this talk, let's go with queer. It's shorter, it's comfortable.
Sure, sure. But anyway, so what do you think about like, okay, tell me how you guys got this concept started, and if you don't mind just reviewing how you got there and what your series of your books is about, because it's fascinating. It's just so
Oh,
fascinating.
thanks. Yeah, so the series is called Aces High, Joker's Wild. Book one is The Hands Were Given. Book two, Call the Bluff. Book three is Raise the Stakes. Book four is Aces and Eights. And book five is Draw Dead. All of the names reference cards because the team that the series revolves around is a unit in a resistance force trying to fight to bring democracy back to what used to be the United States of America, the Wild Cards. And they earned that name, so they're very proud of it. They originally were a reconnaissance unit, and so their approach to things is much more, how do we outthink the corporate bastards? Excuse my language. How do we outthink them? Because they're always going to have more weapons than us.
Yeah.
So how do we run circles around them? And
Essentially, you're doing the modern Star Wars.
somewhat, I watched a lot of MASH 4077 as a kid. That definitely had an impact. Um, I would say a little bit of Star Wars, a little bit of MASH 4077. My favorite description I ever got was Firefly for the cyberpunk genre. And that really just made me warm and fuzzy. Um, but yeah, our series is set 150 years in the future of America. The American government gridlocked itself into non existence, and seven corporations stepped up and said, hey, the government isn't working, we'll take care of you. And bit by bit, they came to own everything. The day you're born, your parents sign a corporate contract indenturing you to service under one of the seven corporations, whoever's land you're born on or hospital you're born in. And after that, you are expected to follow the corporate code of conduct, and any deviation from that drops your citizen standing score. So that's the world that our characters are fighting against.
That
And
is
it,
crazy.
yeah, it that's where we start in book one. And as the books progress and our characters make wins, spoilers, things get better. So there is a lot of found family themes in this series. There's a lot of mutual aid in this series. The wild cards are a very diverse cast going across the rainbow and around the world in terms of where the people are coming from. So our main character and our access character is Aiden Headley. He's a new commander in book one, just assigned to start running the wild cards. And his first reaction is, no, 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 I can't do this. And he, through his building of relationships with the wild cards and the support that he comes to have from this unit and the mutual aid in this unit, he comes into his own. And when he comes into his own, he's able to bring out the best in his unit, and they start making one win after another. We really enjoy getting a lot of queer narratives that don't show up in other places into these stories. Aiden's trans, and getting his story in as just part of being a person really meant a lot because my co-writer ES Argentum is trans, and so that was a big part. Getting characters to be seen as people with many facets. Yes, this is a part of someone's personality, but it's just one part. Was really important to us because we have a lot of. So I'm part under the rainbow as well. I'm bisexual, and we talk about there are a lot of coming out stories,
Oh yeah,
and it's getting better.
it
But for a
is.
long time, there weren't a lot of other stories. It's like, okay, how about for those of us in our 30s who came out a long time ago and now we're just people and now we're just doing things? It's like, yes, I'm bi and I'm also a business owner and I'm also such and such and such and such. Where
Yes,
are those stories? And
right.
so that wasn't the main reason we wrote, but it became a big part of the story. Um,
Agreed.
is writing well-rounded characters who have many parts of themselves. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun getting not just a fun story, but a story that showcases people taking each other as they are and taking care of each other.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
And
We were
I want to, yeah, I'll tell the listeners. I promise this is not preachy. They are the wild cards. There's a lot of pranks pulled. There's a lot of, okay, who brought the lizard in? And a lot of, who put the shaving cream in my shoe? And a lot of people pulling stuff on each other because they treat each other like siblings.
uh,
And that's how they blow off steam between missions is pulling pranks on each other, throwing movie nights, doing goofy stuff.
that is so cool. And you're right. The timing for you guys doing this is so perfect, right? Um, Crazy Rich Asians. They didn't think that that would be a seller, and of course, it just took the world by storm.
Yeah.
Black Panther,
Yeah.
pretty much everybody from that movie was from the continent, the dark
Mhm.
continent. That was beautiful. Black Widow is finally getting her movie coming out soon, hopefully July, I think. So
Yes.
yeah, like it's time to hear new narratives, different voices, and
Yes.
it's time because there is a diversity, and you know we all might like vanilla and we all might like apple pie, but there's something beautiful about mango and
Hmm.
dark chocolate as well, like
Yeah.
different flavors,
Yeah.
and usual like lilikoi or like whatever, like flavors are good, and we shouldn't say that one is better than the other. They're all different and they all are
Exactly. Well, and like you're saying, I vanilla's great, but I grew up with maple syrup and wild rice. And that on a cold morning is the best thing in the world. So if you've never been exposed to something different, then it's time to try things out. It's also exciting to tell a story of a different kind of leadership because for so long we've told, I call them tough guy stories. It's the singular, rugged hero who comes in, says, "We're doing it like this," and da 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 da, and grabs the gun and takes off running. And this is not that story. This is the story where somebody comes in and says, "Okay, we need to do something. So, what do you need in order to do it well? What do you guys need from us?"
nice.
And that mutual care, that mutual support, it doesn't mean that you're fluffy about it. Sometimes caring about someone means sitting them down and going, okay, you're being an ass. You're going to get yourself killed. Quit it. But that's because you care enough to sit someone down instead of just saying you're fired. Um, so showing that communal leadership, that quiet leadership, where the point of you being a leader is to bring out the best in the people around you, was a really important thing. And as the story progresses, because Aiden is able to bring out the best in his people, they're able to do their amazing things. Of course, we also like playing with the flip side of some of our tropes. One of our characters, Kevin, the logistics officer, is very much the, well, I can handle this by myself. I'll just go off. And he's a bit of a infiltration specialist, a bit of a spy, very good at performance and acting. So he's used to just saying, "Oh, I'll take care of it. I'll sneak around. I'll get it made. I'll get it done." And we love writing these scenes in the book where his friends and his commander take him aside and say, "We need you to come home every time." So stop pulling these stunts because you're gonna die.
That is so cool. Oh my gosh, I love what you're doing. And
Great.
I rarely read fiction, but you're making me want to read your series.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, um, there's a lot of taking care of ourselves today so we can take care of the world tomorrow in our series. So book one is more interpersonal. It builds into book two, which is going back to what you were saying about conspiracy theories. We called it Call the Bluff because essentially the seven corporations had been telling a very specific story for a very long time. Well, how do you rip that story down and tell people the truth in a way that they can hear and will actually listen to? And it builds from there. In each place, you have to, first of all, show people where the bars of their cage are and then give them the tools to take it down. And it's a challenge and there's a cost. But if you're there for each other, if you take care of each other, it can be done. And one of the things we like doing is showing that technology is amoral. So there are drones out in the areas between cities. They're called Viper drones. They're search and destroy. If they find an electromagnetic signature, they will drop a bomb on whatever settlement they can find and kill you because they assume you're a quote unquote terrorist.
Wow.
But there's also AI therapy programs that are really good. So you essentially, in this world, can turn on your own therapist whenever you need and on your schedule. And that came from ES and I both have our own mental health things to deal with. And I come from a family that has a lot of mental health things to work through. And one of the biggest frustrations is listening to one of my cousins crying on the other end of the line because they're trying to get help and three therapists have hung up on them and haven't been able to take them in. And we're working with these broken systems. So one of the fun things is being able to write a world in which a lot of things are still wrong, but some things are getting fixed. And writing technology that can be used for good or ill because technology is just a tool. The story we decide to tell with it is the reality we're going to live. So drones could plant seeds or they could drop bombs. AI could force us into certain behaviors or it could be a therapist. We have to choose.
Mm, wow. So cool. You were mentioning the corporations and what a story. What a scary, because I'm a self-employed. You're a
Mm-hmm.
self-employed. I don't
Yep.
do well when I'm in a corporate setting. Too many rules for me. I'm a maverick, you know?
Yep.
And so it's fascinating because we're kind of seeing a little bit of the plot coming into reality with people having to return to work soon.
Unfortunately, although
Not
we've
happy
had a lot of fun because I mean our books are sold on Amazon and that company has a lot of problems, but the shipping and merchandise corporation is called Zoncom. So the fact that we are making them sell a book that makes them the bad guys makes us very, very happy. and but yeah, we actually based a lot of that on a time period that's already happened, the 1890s of America. And if you research that time period, it was not the America we live in. You could get fired if you didn't go to the church that your boss wanted you to go to. Um, Philip Pullman would do that to people. Many of the bigger companies had company towns, and you were expected to live by company rules and buy from the company store. And if you displeased your foreman, he might dock your pay, or he might decide you're not buying bread from the company store this month.
enough.
Um, it was dark, and the employers had all the power, and the workers had nil. And that was the era. when we remember the rise of the unions. People didn't do it because it was fun. People did it because they wanted to survive and stop being treated like disposable parts of a machine to
Right.
make someone else money.
John Steinbeck wrote about that in his book In
Yep.
Dubious Title.
Yep. I mean, a lot of our classics, The Jungle, Slaughterhouse Five, a lot of our a lot of the things that we have written, we didn't make up. We put tomorrow's technology together with what happened yesterday. And when that happens, you look at it and go, oh dear gods, if someone like Carnegie or Pullman got tomorrow's technology and yesterday's laissez faire rules on what he could do. Oh, and that's where we started writing from. Uh,
Mm.
so, yeah, researching the past gives you a lot to put into the future when you're writing the future because that's the scary part. It's not that we're imagining it, it's we're saying it already happened once and let's not do it again.
Wow. Okay. You know what? You're winning the prize for the person who talks about their book the most, in the most compelling way. This is really, really cool because I mean, I'm an author as well, but I don't talk about it nearly. I mean, it's just so fascinating what you're talking about because it's a haunting how real your books are, even though they are in the future. But we look at it and say, ooh. There's a really interesting book that you should probably read. It's a George Friedman.
Hmm.
It's a prediction book. It's called The Next 100 Years. And it came out in 2009. And it's
Okay.
he's a geopoliticist or something like that. And my friend had me read it, and it's like whoa! And I'm about to read it a second time because even though, like, what no one could have predicted a pandemic, or could they have? Miss, I just wrote, yeah.
Well, and
But
I feel like we knew there was a pandemic at some point as a culture because, I mean,
well, this
it was
isn't the
100 years since the last big one. We knew it
yeah,
was coming someday, but that's like saying the big fault in California will have the big one someday. But
yeah,
everyone says, not today.
right, yeah, and it's true. It's kind of like all these crazy stories. Like, remember, Jonah and the whale and how he got swallowed by the whale. And then did you hear about the recent lobster diver that got swallowed by the whale? He's like, oh my
Yep.
God. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Do these stories have like some kind of like what? Was it clickbait back, 2,000 years ago? And it was just passed down. It's just interesting how to be human is to live through story.
Yes, we are narrative creatures. And for better or for worse, because what you were talking about earlier with conspiracy theory, that is the dark side of storytelling.
Yeah,
And the dark side of storytelling is taking away someone else's humanity and making them into a creature to hate. And story can do that, or it can give back someone's humanity, or it can make us look at other creatures as not human but equal if we tell the right stories. It
right.
all depends on the stories we decide to tell. And I grew up with a lot of folklore. So I'm Irish on one side of the family and Menominee on the other. And I grew up, luckily enough, I got to know both my great grandparents helped raise me. And they both told me their stories. And I grew up with these strong stories on both sides. And I learned early, like the story we decide to tell tells us who we are and tells us who we can be. Because one of the things I had to unlearn was that my great grandfather told me, we are exiled wherever we are. And my grandma used to say, you know, well, we just don't fit in because we're exiles. We just don't fit in anywhere. I was like, you know, I don't think that's right. I can make friends. I can fit in somewhere. It's not going to be some mythical homeland, but I fit. I will find a place where I fit. And in my early 30s, I have circles of friends, and I have a place that I really fit. But yeah, it's easy to fall into, you have to insist on telling a story that you want to live. Otherwise, the story tells you, if that makes sense.
Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. Well, let's talk about you a little bit. Like you as
Yeah.
the human being. Like this is so much fun. I'm so enjoying you. What makes you special and unique? You kind of listed some stuff, but like, we all have our thing that makes us kind of a superhero. What is your superhero?
I don't know about superhero, the X-Men maybe. um, so in terms of what makes me special, I am a Shanake. I am a storyteller by blood and by choice. Under my own name, I write ethnobotany, which is the intersection of storytelling and the plant world. So I write illustrated books about what different plants have done in human culture.
Oh, that's the landscaping
Yeah,
business.
and I own a landscaping business. My main focus is planting water wise and native gardens that don't demand so much water from the high plains that I now live in. My heart will always be in the deep forest of my home, but I live here now, so you can't turn the high desert of the West into the Midwest. You cannot plant. I can go down this rant. Stop planting things that don't belong in the environment you live in. Plant what lives there well, and then you won't have to give it all this nitrogen, all this babying.
Yeah.
Plant belongs there.
Where do you
You cut
live?
out a little.
Oh, I'm so sorry. What?
No, you cut out a little.
Oh, sorry. Where do you live?
I live in Colorado.
Oh,
Um, yeah, I
Denver.
live in the Denver area of Colorado, and ES lives around here as well.
Gotcha. Okay.
Um, yeah, so I come originally from a little tiny town in upper Wisconsin, and my heart will always be there, but there aren't a lot of jobs back home, and there aren't a lot of opportunities. And also, the mosquitoes are this big. So there's reasons to be out here.
Again,
Um,
I grew up in Florida. I always joke that the mosquito is the Florida state bird.
yes, we tell the same joke in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
It's kind of irresistible when your mosquitoes are as big as your pinky finger.
Oh, it's ridiculous. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And when you're eaten alive, yeah, exactly. But no,
Yeah.
you're right. To tell the story of plants, isn't it wonderful to be the voice for someone, for a being that cannot express? But it is interesting how the hippie tree huggers were right all the time,
Yeah. Well,
bringing
and
a level of calm and energy to us.
yeah, and I also enjoy being obliquely, let's say, obliquely humorous in my writing. So my last book was on the invasive weeds of America and their stories and how they got here. And my whole point of the book is stop yelling at the plant. Your ancestor brought this thing and planted it and said it was pretty. So essentially, those stories are stories of human hubris or human thoughtlessness and plants that said, all right, you're going to put me here? Fine. But it's also a story of being indomitable and being tough as nails and being impossible to eradicate, which some humans have had to be as well. So it's a lot. We have a lot to learn from plants. I also honor my lineage by illustrating ancient Irish poetry and bringing it to life in illustration in a new way so that it's more accessible. Because this poetry is gorgeous, but it never got the attention that haiku got because a lot of Irish culture was suppressed
Mm.
due to the vagaries of history. It's a long story, and this isn't the time to tell it. But this really gorgeous poetry was neglected for a long time. So I'm working to illustrate it and make it more accessible to modern readers because for me to get it, I have to go through some really dusty old manuscripts that are a pain in the butt to read. And I want to create something that's easy and accessible and fun to read and makes that poetry live again for new readers. So that's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
So by in the summer times, I am a landscaper. And then in the winters, I work on my illustrated work and I write the sci-fi with ES Argentum all the time. We each have a 6-year plan stuck to our walls with our personal projects, and then the wildcards books. You know, this month this month this month this, all the way down. It's not quite as impressive as it sounds. It's essentially both of us saying, "What are we going to forget? Okay, we're writing a list." It,
plan. It's a really good plan, and it keeps you on track when you know a six. In fact, hats off to you. Not many businesses are run with a 6-year plan, let alone a creative endeavor.
it's
Good for
sanity. It's for pure sanity purposes. It's I don't want to get to July and go, wait, what was I doing? Because May is very intense for me. And so in May,
you.
I'm
Get
not
it.
going to remember a bloody thing.
I
And
don't
so,
write stuff down, forget it. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So if I have a sheet that says May, do this. Okay, I'll do that. So, yeah, everyone wants their plants in May. So May is quite intense. But other than that, the X-Men reference is because I write some of what I know in some of our characters are more physically divergent and neurodivergent characters. I have a disorder called hyperinsulinemia, which means I produce twice as much adrenaline and twice as much insulin as I ought to. And essentially, that means I don't really notice when my body is tired because my body just dumps in more adrenaline to keep me running until I literally can't anymore. But it also means I will start to shake instead of just feeling tired.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
yeah, I jokingly say I have a check engine light. Um, and it's getting the shakes. But if I don't stop then my speech starts to slur and then I fall over. Because
Wow.
essentially my body has run out of sugar to run the cells and starts looking for sugar in places like my brain, which is not a good thing.
No.
So it's a congenital disorder, and it's linked to a lot of autoimmune disorders, or rather dysregulation disorders, and some of those are mood disorders. So my family has a lot of um, mood disorder problems, anxiety and depression being the main ones.
Well, aren't you glad though that we're at an era where you can start identifying what it
Yeah,
is? I
well,
mean,
yeah, and it's
40 years ago, they didn't have the testing. Here's a nowhere close, but I'll just give you the example. Okay, I grew up as a kid. My grandfather was a cabbage farmer. I couldn't stand cabbage. It was the nastiest tasting thing ever. And fast forward to my 40s, I'm having some health issues. We do a leap diet test to figure out what am I sensitive to. It wasn't until my 40s that I figured out, oh, I'm really sensitive to cabbage. Like I should not be eating this. But because I'm a kid and because we don't have these tests back then and because there isn't a language around food sensitivity, it's shut up, you're being a picky eater, stop being a brat, you're disrespecting your grandfather. And I'd be like, I want to try, like they try to force this thing on you, like,
mhm.
blah. And so after I took all the testing, I realized that all the things that I naturally gravitated to, I'm not sick with. And the
Yep,
things that I had to eat to make somebody happy, right?
yep,
I'm really not happy with. And so it's thank goodness we are reaching a point where, okay, this is how I'm feeling, and it's attached to this,
hmm
and it's not just a shut up and put up kind of,
yep.
We're like, all right, how do we treat it? So thank God we are
Yeah,
having conversations around
exactly. And so in my family, my aunt's generation, the generation in their early 50s, late 40s, were the first ones who started really saying, okay, we're not just fey, we're not just odd, we're not just different, that we have a disorder going on. Because we were described as fey passionate people. And we were just a little bit odd as a family. And it's like, oh, actually. And we started addressing this stuff. My generation still has a fair amount of stigma to deal with, but the younger kids, so I have a very big, sprawling family. The younger kids, my generation, the millennials, we're turning to the kids and being like, kiddo, this, check this, do this, don't do that. Got it? Good. Call me if you need me. And we've created a family, the generation before me and my generation have created a family phone tree and a family connection. Um, we call it a phone circle. Like everybody checks on each other, everybody takes care of each other, everybody takes care of the young kids because we we lost between 2 and 5 people a generation to basically suicide.
it. Oh,
Um,
they didn't know how to deal with it. Oh,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So some of it was very obvious suicide, and some of it was, well, he went off to war and didn't come back, or, well, he drove the truck into a ditch and we lost Uncle Ed. And there were a lot of situations where I guess you could call them deaths of despair, but there were also some pretty blatant, yeah, that was straight up suicide. Um,
Well, I'm
so
so happy though for you. I mean, look at you guys. You came together as a family. You started identifying things. You start. It's like, all right, let's do. It's so healthy.
it's
So
it's it's been good. We're still dealing with some of our older relatives not being able to address it in themselves or in others, and we love them dearly, but there are regular moments where one of the cousins will call me and just be like, "My mother," and I'll be like, "Uh huh, what happened?" And I'll do the same thing. I'll be like, "Uh, why?" to a cousin, and the cousin will be like, "Honey, what happened?" So it's getting better. As a society, I think we can change because my family was very much, you must rise, you must succeed, you must better yourself. You don't want to be trashed. You don't want to be this. You don't want to be that. And I hope to be the last generation to still apologize when somebody walks in the door that my house is not perfect and get a look from my friends like, your house is clean. um, but that comes from intergenerational trauma. I mean, we come from a family where there used to be Bureau of Indian Affairs folks showing up and they would wear a white glove and they would run a finger across the mantle to check if my great grandma was keeping the house clean enough. And just these really infantilizing things. Like, and after that, you will be perfect because you will not be shamed. But that kind of thing leaves a mark on a family. And whether it's, you know, interracial stuff or whether it's poverty related, the same kind of stuff would happen in the Appalachias and a lot of anywhere where people said we need help, and the mainstream culture said, "Oh, you poor sad things." No, we're people. So that all that said, it makes great story fuel. I will say that because um, in the way that Aiden it was written with a lot of ES's issues dialed up to 11. One of our characters is a neurodivergent coder, and she has a lot of my own issues dialed up to 11. For example, when you have the conditions I have, touch when you're not expecting it will make you jump a mile because your body is constantly in fight or flight. The amount of adrenaline in our systems is through the roof. Um, so yeah, we took that and put it into Tweak, and if you just brush by her, she will laminate herself to the wall and go, "Don't touch me." And we have story reasons for that. But it was fun getting that catharsis of writing a character who's just like, "You
That's,
cannot touch me, and if you scare me, I'll break your nose."
oh my gosh. So the next question I have is, who do you serve in your life? But I think you kind of told us you serve your audience by telling really great stories.
we
You,
try to we try to serve our community, and we define that as LGBT folks, neurodivergent folks, and sometimes my own younger cousins, younger folks who can learn from the way what has come before and do better. And one of the ways we do that is by telling the stories, but then in the back of each book, we have a note from one of the characters saying, if you need help, here's some resources. And we list a set of resources in the back of each book following the themes of the book. So, book one is a lot of trans supportive resources and a lot of mental health resources, starting with a hotline in case you're feeling the need for self harm. And book two is full of resources for community building. Each book has stuff revolving around the themes.
wow, you two are genius.
Well, for us, it's mostly about writing what we wish had been there when we were young, because both of us got told variations on "go fix it," and ES hates the phrase "go get help" because it's never followed with "here's where" or "I can help with that." And if you the response to the person who says something like that is, "You ever tried to call a therapist? Try it and then say, go get help." So for us, it was really important that if someone was going through similar issues to our characters, they turn to the last page and they go, "Oh, there are resources in the real world." And they feel like not only are you not alone, but here's some stuff that helps.
Right. Yeah, you are not alone.
Yeah.
And speaking of which, we all have a why, right? Like, why are you doing what you're doing? You're just such a beautifully authentic and vulnerable individual. That's what I love about you. You're not putting on airs. You're like, this is me. This is what I figured out. And that's what makes you just so approachable and lovable, right? How can you not love you after, getting to know you, right? So what is your why? And I think you're kind of hinting as to what it is, but I'm just kind of curious to hear in your own words what you think your why is.
I want to change the story for the better. I want there to be a future worth living in, and I've got a pen in my hand, so I can at least help to start writing that.
Ah, that's so cool. That is so cool. And then finally, what advice do you have for our listeners? Because oh my gosh, you're just so inspirational. So give us some good loving. Tell us what we need to do in order to make it to the next step, especially when things are looking
When things are darkest, light a candle. It doesn't mean things are going to magically get better, but better to light a candle in the dark than to sit alone. And if someone else needs a light, offer it. And don't bow your head, don't give up, because you can do this. It might take a lot longer and be a lot weirder than you thought it was going to get there, but you can do this. Just don't let the flame go out.
up, especially when people are trying to extinguish it.
Yes. All right. I will add a rider. If somebody tries to blow your candle out, punch them in the guts.
It's interesting that you mentioned the candle because I have often taught in my classes, I am like a candle. I can light up a room. Just don't you be blowing on my candle. Don't weigh me down with your negative energy. Let me help lift everyone else up.
Yes.
Another phrasing to kind of go along with the theme is a high tide lifts all boats, right?
Yeah. Well,
So,
I'm going to offer two phrases from my great grandparents. My Shanda, my great grandfather, used to say, under the shelter of each other, we survive. And my great grandmother would say, when you're knocked down, you're in the perfect place to headbutt them in the groin. And between those two, you'll get through.
I love the sense of humor coming out of your family. That's awesome. Oh my gosh, everybody, I hope you enjoyed our wonderful discussion with Olivia. Holy moly. Please look up their books, please. O.E. Tierman, and
Mhm.
it's Joker's Wild.
Ace is high, Joker's wild.
This time.
You can find us at oetierman.com. You can get links to all of our stuff there. We're on Amazon. Just type in OE Tierman. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. We're sort of on Instagram. I'll admit we don't. It mirrors everything else we do, so we're sort of bad about that one. And we're on Goodreads, so yeah, you'll see us around.
I love it. I love it. Oh my gosh, I have to get your series. So I
Oh,
will. I have a lot of business books that I have to read right now, but as soon as I have the time, I mean, seriously, you've just been amazing. And
thank you.
wow, thank you so much, and everybody, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. And have a wonderful evening. Okay, bye.